Good morning. Are we live? Looks like we're live. Well, hey everyone, whoever's here at this point, this early hour, at least, depending where your time zone is. Really excited to just celebrate 3,000 subs. It's really exciting to me to hit this milestone. My channel was such a slow growing channel. I think it took me 10 months to hit 100 subs, and then maybe another 6 months I hit 500. But anyway, I'm glad to see some people in the chat already. Good morning, Hans. Hey, John, how are you? And Francois as well. So just going to hang out for like an hour or something like that. So it's kind of a Q&A free for all. I guess we could have the way I usually do my brunch and book talk. I often start with the what are you drinking and what are you reading? So I'm drinking a big, tall cup of coffee right now, and I'm reading. I started Hyperion by Dan Simmons last night, and I'm really excited to continue that one. I read all of the Priest's story last night and found it riveting. Just have a really good feeling about that book and that series. So really excited for that. Been reading some Robin Hobb lately. Been reading the Empire trilogy lately, so it's been a really good month. Read The Ferryman by Justin Cronin as well. So, yeah, I'm just really excited to get into those. I know it's kind of a long time coming for me because I've read Dan Simmons before, like 5 books, but I haven't read any. Hyperion. I read Ilium and Olympus, and those were kind of a mixed bag for me. So I'm a little late to the game, but I'm excited to get there. So, but good morning, everybody. The Rogue, Heidi, Chris, good to see you, man. Packed. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Yeah. glad you enjoy the channel. It's like I said when I started, I'm still kind of weird to me to have kind of a following because it took so long, and I didn't really think it would ever even hit like 1,000. So, I don't think I'll ever do mic numbers, but even have 3,000 subs is just really cool that people just like to hear me talk about books. So I guess I'm being a bad host. Yes, we love Hyperion. Yeah, I'm really, really excited to get into that one. So let's see. I've not read Thomas Ligotti. So maybe that's one to look out for me. So thank you, Francois. I really appreciate that. Just enjoy what I do. And it's one of those, we're celebrating the subs, but what I like most of the comments, I just love the interaction and talking about books when I post a video, and people like my thoughts or add to my thoughts or give me different takes on the books I'm reading. I just love the conversation. It's I find in real life there's very few people that tend to read as much as I do. I had a group when I lived in Dallas. We had a nice book club of a bunch of guys that read a lot, but since I lived in Austin, I don't kind of have that outlet as much. So it's nice to just have this online community where we just talk about books and support channels and just, spread the love of literature around. So it is a Q&A, so feel free to just drop any comments into the chat here, and I'll work through them. Yes, I'll definitely read Cixin Liu for sure. I'm kind of working my way through that with some sci-fi. Probably my next priority after Hyperion is to start Christopher Rocchio's books. I probably will wait though, because I backed the Kickstarter for the first book. So I kind of want to read it on that gorgeous volume, but that's probably the next priority for me in the sci-fi genre. But there's more I want to read. I want to read Adrian Tchaikovsky for sure. And there's just a lot of, I mean, you know how it is. I got a TBR of like 500 books on a spreadsheet. So, Heidi, that's awesome. I hope that you love it. That is literally one of my favorite books, Count of Monte Cristo. So, so good. Such a great one. All right. Thank you, Joanna. Appreciate it. Really, again, just kind of surprised the channel's gotten this big. Haven't read China Mieville, but I've I mean, Jimmy's been raving about China Mieville, and then I just saw a cover to one of the books and it just kind of grabbed me. So I think that's an author I need to experience as well. And I know Alex had done a review of Perdido Street Station as well. So yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, right. I mean, that's the coolest part. The likes and subs are great, but the comments section, that's what it's all about. Favorite character in Pillars of the Earth. I mean, I just love Tom Builder. He's kind of the heart of it. It's a fictional character that made me love architecture. So that's probably my choice for Pillars of the Earth. I heard you may join Servant of Empire discussion in September. Oh, I hope so. I'd love to. I saw after the fact, I saw they did on Alan's channel a Daughter of the Empire discussion last month. But yeah, I'd love to. I'm loving this series. I'm kicking myself for missing this in the 80s because I read so much fantasy in the 80s. And I think I've commented several times that this might be the best fantasy written in the 1980s. So it's really cool to finally get to it. I know I saw Andrew in the chat. Hey, Andrew, I know he's reading it now too. And we both put something on Twitter like a few days apart, and Janie Wirtz herself commented to both of us that we got there late, but there's no timetable to read books or review books because it's, literature lives on forever. And I'm just glad that we finally, both of us finally reading this amazing series because I know we both love Magician. Yeah, absolutely, John, for sure. Especially when my channel was tiny. I mean, I mentioned at the outset, it took me like 10 months to hit 100 subs, and I wasn't going to keep doing it, but I just enjoyed the interaction, so I just kept at it. And now that more people watch, it's even more gratifying because more people discover the channel all the time and just bring more interesting perspectives of literature to the discussions. And yeah, I just love it. David, I'll probably start Sun Eater as soon as I get that that beautiful Kickstarter volume. So I don't know when that is. I don't know any of the Kickstarter timelines. I've backed probably too many of them this year, but I've backed a bunch of them. But whenever I get that one, I think I want to read it with that beautiful volume rather than picking up a paperback or whatever. So yeah, let's see. Plans on Ian M. Banks. So the Rogue, you'll have to help me with this one. I know I think he writes as Ian M. Banks and he writes as Ian Banks. I think I want to read the one that is not the hard sci-fi. So I'm not sure which of those is. So I don't know if the culture is the hard sci-fi, because hard sci-fi I really struggle with. I just really like the jargon and all of that. I just really struggle with that kind of thing. So, but that is an author that's been on my radar quite a bit, but I don't know if it's Ian M. Banks or Ian Banks. So thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I really think Sun Eater. I mean, I was talking with Jonathan at Words in Time at one point about this, and he thought that would be the series for me. So I'm looking forward to it because it's I would say that Dune is probably my favorite sci-fi book, and Foundation is probably my favorite sci-fi series, but I have a feeling that I haven't really encountered the sci-fi series for me yet. So maybe it's Sun Eater because it's a little more sci-fantasy. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I saw it posted this morning. I wish I'd been able to hop in live on the chat. I'll have to watch the replay for that one. But do I like Stephen King's Misery? Absolutely. Although I have an uncle that stopped reading King after this book because it was just so brutal. I actually, kind of unpopular opinion, I think Annie Wilkes is King's greatest villain. She is just so scary. How do you feel about Robin Hobb writing another Realm of the Underlings book? I mean, I love it, of course. I mean, it's Hobb. She says it's going to take a while, but I mean, I trust her, even though I just finished Soldier Sun and wasn't real high on that series. Just being back in the world might be pretty great. I mean, when I saw that tweet or Facebook post or whatever, I immediately started thinking about how she left things and just the possibilities of what kind of story she could tell. So I trust her. I mean, she's my favorite fantasy author, so I'm a fan. Yeah, she's the best. Oh yeah, Joanne, it's really really great. I'm such a fan of the series. I hope it ends as well as the first two books because I think both were 5-star reads for me. Does anyone know? Someone can answer in the chat maybe if Cixin Liu is still writing. Most recent since 2012. I don't really know. I'm not sure about that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I missed Janny Works either. But yeah, I had read the 4 Rift War saga books and then the 2 books that were then called Krondor's Sons. I read those, but yeah, somehow missed the Empire books. So I'm really really glad that I picked them up. Really, I've got to thank Alan because he did the read along. I actually don't know if I would have picked him up this year without that. Just finished Legends of Pride, how different it feels from everything else. Thankfully, different from the heroes. Oh, okay. Yeah. I loved Legend. It's interesting. The Heroes is one of those. My unpopular opinion on my Abercrombie ranking video was I had it kind of low. I think I had it 10th out of his 12, and some people call it his greatest book. And I think it's all a matter of how much I don't know how much military fantasy you like and how much you can stomach. And that book's an entire battle. But yeah, Legend is, but I don't know. It doesn't feel quite like it's just one battle. Yeah, I loved Legend. Thank you for the congrats. Appreciate it. All right, what else we got? The first 3 Sun Eaters, love them. Need to continue. Yeah. I just have a feeling those are going to be great. So let's see. Do I like Arthur C. Clarke? Yes, I do. So actually, it's interesting. I have a video going. I've a little preview. I haven't filmed it yet, but it's in the back of my head. Books I was wrong about, and one of those is Childhood's End because I didn't rank it very high, but I can't stop thinking about the end of that book. But I did love 2001 when I read it. I think I actually read it in 2001. I think I picked it up that year. Did enjoy that one. I have a couple more on the shelf that I haven't read, though. I have Rendezvous with Rama, which I want to read, and I have City in the Stars, which I'll get to those soon at some point. But yeah, nothing like immediate plans, but I'll definitely get to them. So sci-fi under both of them. Yeah, one of the set is hard sci-fi. I don't remember. I'll have to go back or ask Jonathan or Michael, one of our major sci-fi channels that probably know the answers to that one. Yeah, I do want to read Children of Time. I read my first Tchaikovsky this year. What was it? Where is it? It's right here. The City of Last Chances. Yeah. And I really liked the writing. The book itself was good to very good, but definitely there's more of him I want to read. I know like Shadows of the Apt is supposed to be a really good series too. Thank you, Anitha. I'm going to be on Anitha's channel in about 3 hours. We're going to talk about Fool's Assassin. So hop by there. So yeah. I know, Andrew. Yeah, back to Misery. Yeah, no supernatural big bad. And that's, I think, one of the things about why Annie Wilkes is such a scary villain, because she's just kind of a true believer and believes what she's doing is right. And yeah, for sure. 700 pages into Pillars of the Earth, loving it. Want the Wicked William. Yeah, right. Such a great book. The thing I remember about the ending of that book most is I was a couple hundred pages from the end and I was starting to feel sad because I was running out of book. I just love that book. I'm excited. About a month from now, we have The Armor of Light, which is the next installment of that series coming out. So yeah, it's going to be just another one in that series I'm looking forward to getting to. So let's see. Yes, 1 p.m. on Anitha's channel. We'll be talking about Fool's Assassin. That's going to be a lot of fun. 2025 reread of Hob. Yeah, maybe I'll jump in on that. I might be ready. So just order Childhood's End. Yeah, it's yeah, I'll let you judge for yourself, but it's one of those I didn't when I first read it, I didn't love the ending, but I can't stop thinking about the ending. And that's one of those things that sometimes our initial reactions are wrong, and sometimes a book just needs time to stew. And for me, I think sometimes that's sci-fi in a nutshell. I think I sometimes need time to think about the concepts and really let them sit in my brain a little bit longer. But yeah. So let's see. Apt pupil, one of oh, absolutely. That's probably well, I don't remember the breathing method from that collection very well, but that's probably kind of the one that flies under the radar there because everybody knows The Body, Stand By Me. Everybody knows Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, but Apt Pupil's chilling. And the title, I mean, tells you a lot too. Robert Jordan must be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what they say. I've never reread Wheel of Time, but I've heard that when you reread it, like all the foreshadowing is there, that it's in place from the very beginning that you just don't notice it. So I think that's one of those. I need to give it about 10 years till it's not fresh in my brain, but I did enjoy Wheel of Time. I know it has its detractors and it does have I think the slog's overrated a little bit, but it's certainly there. I mean, the 10th book is, to be honest, is kind of crap. But the eighth book ended well, but was kind of a waste. And yeah, yeah, Wheel of Time. Hey, throw questions into the chat there. Yeah, that's funny. I started doing like planning my TBR, and I'm about to change it. So look for that next month on my video. But I kind of like the structure, but I miss having some the flexibility of just being able to pick up a book at random. So I have some plans for that going forward, starting next month with my TBR. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's good to have plans. Like I think there's some of us that might be reading Durfee's book starting in January. But I think this year, I personally overscheduled myself, so I don't want to ever do that again. So, all right. I thought of interviewing authors. Think it'd be great. Thank you. And who would you want to interview first? I did. Let's see. I interviewed. Who did I interview? H.C. Newell. We did just a short interview about her book when they were doing a little story. I would like to do more of that. I mean, obviously, if I wanted to talk to anybody, it would be Robin Hobb. But I think anyone that would want to be on the channel that is someone I enjoy would be amazing. The one thing I like talking about with authors is just the craft. In fact, my brunch and book talk, the one where I had 3 authors, where I had Tori and P.L. Stewart and Philip Chase, and we talked about the craft. That was one of my favorite videos that I've done this year because I always like that. I'm a musician, and I never tire of hearing people talk about that. So definitely would be up to interview more authors for sure. So why do you think Stephen King disliked Wheel of Time? I don't think King likes epic fantasy, I think is probably the issue. Yeah, I remember him making that statement when he was that hour-long discussion with George R. R. Martin where George asked him how he wrote so damn fast. That's probably the reason. I mean, besides Lord of the Rings, I don't know if King's even read any epic fantasy. So that's probably the reason. It's just the genre. It's not his thing. Let's see, Anthony. Just finished Ordinary Grace. Okay, I'm going to write that down. Always got the pen and paper handy during these kinds of discussions. If it compares favorably to Boy's Life, I'm all in because that was one of the best books of the last couple months for me. McCammon's probably leading my Author of the Year competition. But yeah, if it compares favorably to that, I'm all in. So thanks for the recommendation there. Best King short stories are Autopsy Room 4. So I'm actually, I have a plan of, I'm going to start rereading all of King's short stories. I've been reading this year a short story between each book that I read. And most of the year's been dominated by the huge Robert E. Howard Conan's Brethren collection. The one I'm doing now is the Inheritance and Other Stories, which is Megan Lindholm / Robin Hobb, which I found out in the beginning. Both of them are pseudonyms. Like neither of them is her actual name. But after I do that, I'm going to start a King reread and reread all the short stories and all the novellas just periodically over the next few years. So Heidi, when I get to the end, I'll let you know. I don't remember that one that clearly. So, but some of these I read so long ago, like Night Shift, I probably read in like 1988 or something like that. So I don't really remember a lot of the earlier ones. Okay, well, that's good to know about the culture, because I know just sometimes I've encountered some hard sci-fi, and the jargon just kind of loses me a little bit. So, thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Alan Dean Foster. I think I read way back when. I think he wrote some Star Trek books, and I seem to remember reading some Star Trek books by Alan Dean Foster, but I haven't read anything recently. So, but hey, I'm all for light too. I mean, they can't all be the big, heavy tomes. Do I have interest in the Expanse series? Absolutely. Yeah, that's another one I need to read. Probably that might be the one after Sun Eater, maybe. Yeah, I do want to read those. I'm not sure. I want to watch the show too, but I want to read the books first. So I should probably get to the books. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yeah, that was my favorite, probably my favorite video at all this year was that brunch and book talk with Tori and PL and Philip. One of the things I loved is they all gave each other room to talk, because sometimes we talk on top of each other on these discussions. It's natural because there's technology lag and all of that, and it's hard to get the pacing right. But I felt that everybody was just like so respectful and so listening to what everybody else was saying, and it was such a great discussion. Matthew Corbett. So yeah, I need to start those. There's a bunch of those too. I mean, more McCammon. I really need to do more research into McCammon to see what I want to do next, whether I want to hit the Corbett series or hit more of the standalones, because he's quite prolific and he's kind of like a King. He's written in a lot of different kind of genres. So I need to do a little bit more research there. Just bought Inheritance. How is it so far? So I actually started with a shorter one in the middle because I had like 20 minutes to kill. So I picked like a little 12-page short story. It was called Cut, and it was so disturbing, which made me realize Megan Lindholm writes different than Hobb. And she said that at the beginning, because it starts, there's like, I think 7 short stories by Lindholm, I think 6 short stories in novella, and then the 3 Hobb stories are kind of meaty. But yeah, the one I read was like way disturbing. So it's going to be very interesting. The only thing I've read by Megan Lindholm is Wizard of the Pigeons, and I thought it was okay. Didn't think it was great, but definitely read the intro. I found it interesting. Hobb talking about how Lindholm and Hobb write differently, or whatever her real name is, talking about how, you know, Hobb expands her ideas so much, and it was just really interesting. So reading Salem's Lot first time in October, Dark Tower sometime 2024. Absolutely. I'd even consider saving Salem's Lot until, you know, right before Wolves of the Kala. Might be something to consider. Although I had read it and then I reread it as well. But yeah, as long as it's fresh in your brain, it's probably okay if you do Dark Tower pretty soon after that and not forget a lot of the details, especially the character details. So congrats on the milestone. Where's the tuxedo? Tuxedo's in the room. Yeah, I wasn't going to put that on. I do don it for one video per year, though, my Red Fury Book Awards. So I'll put that again there. Thanks, Shad. You've been here a long time with the channel. I appreciate you checking it out. Read Faithful and Fallen. I have not, so I hope Will and Ed are not here. Yeah, I haven't gotten to that yet. I will. It's just there's so many fantasy series. I don't know if a lot of you are aware. I don't know when I've most recently talked about it, but I took a big break from reading the fantasy genre. I read a lot when I was like in high school and kind of stopped in college because I had to read stuff for college. And then after college, when I got back into reading, I wasn't reading fantasy. I was just exploring other genres. So I kind of took a break from about like late 90s to about 2015, 2017, something like that. So there are all these modern fantasy authors I haven't read because I just took so many years off. So it's actually been fun because I can jump in and like all these authors have completed series and I'm not waiting for them, you know. Um, Came back in, and even the Wheel of Time started back when, and I remembered Robert Jordan. I was able to read that, and I've read Sanderson and Hobb and Abercrombie and everything. So it's been kind of nice, but playing catch up a little bit. So I'll get to that one soon. Read 1122. Oh, excellent. Glad you loved it. Glad I influenced you to read it. That's my favorite King novel. Absolutely. Historical fiction, favorite time period, culture. So culture, I'm really loving Eastern culture at this point because it's a lot newer to me as far as experiencing both in real life and in literature. So I'm enjoying a lot of that. I'm enjoying the Clavel books, and I'm enjoying kind of the Eastern inspired fantasies I've read as well. There's there's a self pub series I want to read real soon. That's set similar time period. I do like, just coming from the fantasy realm, I do like older quasi medieval, Middle Ages, those kind of time periods. I do kind of gravitate to that a little bit more. I will say it's weird, I don't know why, but like my whole life, the only time period that I hate is Industrial Revolution. For some reason, it's like the most boring like time period ever. I don't know why. I struggled a little bit with the first book of Age of Madness because of that, because I remember in school, Industrial Revolution, we started talking about it and like my eyes would glaze over every single time. I just found it so dull and so uninteresting. But yeah, I would say the older stuff, and I mean, kind of getting into more Eastern settings has been really interesting to me. I'll be reading Guy Jin very soon, which is another one of Clavel's chunky historical fiction novels. It's the third one in the chronology of his Asian saga, so I'm looking forward to that. So I've read Four Past Midnight. Yes, it's just been a long time. That's another one of those I read so long ago. So I'm looking forward to the reread because I hear some people say it's stronger than Different Seasons, which is fantastic. I love it. Expands a few cases. Like the adaptation better than the books. Interesting. Hope they adapt. Oh, so they didn't adapt the whole series then. That's interesting too. Yeah, The Expanse was so strong. The series, the reputation, I actually recommended it to a friend who loved it, even though I hadn't seen it. So I definitely want to see all of those. Okay, got that one there. Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I definitely need to read Long Price Quartet. I know Joanna just talked about that recently. Of course, Alan's the long price prophet or whatever Philip calls him. But yeah, the setting of that one, and I like the idea of kind of the scope of the four books, how there's like these big time jumps in between. Kind of reminds me how I love of like Fitz's story in Realm of the Elderlings, how we meet him as a boy and then as an adult and then as an old man. I really like that concept. So yeah, I definitely need to get to those too. All right. What's your Friday night ready to start the weekend album? Probably White Noise because I'm exhausted and I don't go out anymore. Yeah. You read Cormac McCarthy. So I've read The Road. I've read the first All the Pretty Horses. Is that what it's called? I read that one. And then I DNF'd the second book in the series, The Crossing. So that's all I've read with McCarthy. I do want to read Outer Dark and Blood Meridian. Those are two that I want to get to. I think I said a recent video, something like, I don't know if I'm a fan. I don't know if McCarthy's an author for me yet. I'm just kind of not, I don't have enough of a sample size. The Road is one of my favorite books of all time, but like all the Pretty Horses, if that's what it's called, something like that. It was okay. I didn't love it, and then The Crossing, I DNF'd it. Didn't like it at all. So I'm not sure. We'll see where it goes with that. So all right, thanks, John. Take care. Yeah, I definitely want to get that. I'll be reading everything by GGK. Lines of Al-Razan was fantastic. I have Tagana and A Song for Arbonne on the shelf ready to go, but love at first sight with that author. I'll definitely be reading everything. So yeah, Under Heaven for sure. And we'll be doing Monday or Tuesday night next week. We're doing a discussion of Lines of Al-Razan on Joanna's channel. So any of you that have read that, come check that out. That's going to be fun to talk about that fantastic book. Not a fantasy fan. Which book could change my mind? Wow. I mean, it kind of depends where you're coming from as a reader. Like if you like historical fiction, maybe a fantasy that's heavy on that with like but's light on magic could work. Like Daughter of the Empire works like that. There's only a little bit of magic in that story. Or even, well, Lines of Al-Razan, the only magic in that story is one character who kind of has some clairvoyance things. So if you're coming from that, that might be a good good way to get in. Yeah, that's a tough question. Of course, I'd have to say Robin Hobb could get anybody in with Assassin's Apprentice because I love that so much. Um, hmm, that's a good one. And what do you like to read? Throw that in there. Maybe I can have some other recommendations beyond that. But those two, I think, at least, are not heavy on the magic elements. They're not heavy on the tropes, which I think a lot of people don't like the tropes. So that's the author I was thinking of. Yeah, Baptiste Pinson Wu. I need to read those. I know Tori and Alan have been talking about that series, and it's supposed to be like a 10-book series. I think 2 or 3 are out at this point. So yeah, that's one I definitely want to read because I really think that will be something good. Russian Urban Fantasy, Night Watch, Great Eastern Vibes. Very cool. I still haven't found the urban fantasy for me. It might end up being, Jim Butcher's books, but I've only read the first 2 and wasn't a huge Harry Dresden fan. So let's see. Favorite Stephen King character. I'll just say Roland Deschain. I mean, he's the one you live with the most out of all of his books. So you're with him the longest. And yeah, I just love his philosophy. Love how he brought together his quartet. Yeah, Roland's my choice. I do have at some point, one of the top 10s I want to do this year is favorite literary characters. So it'll be tough to narrow down Stephen King, but maybe it's Roland. Yeah, Daughter of the Empire. I saw your other one there that you said you don't like world building. It does have world building to just kind of teach you about this other world, but it's more of a political drama, very Machiavellian, and it's Eastern inspired. So I think the world building itself, all it does is just kind of remind you of Japan. But that's a fantastic one. So 30-year time jump after the 6th book of the stand. Oh, I see. So that's why they stopped the series to find new actors, age them up. Final books are the best. Well, it's good to know it finished well, especially those long series. I mean, you're always nervous about it ending well. Like, what was the one? It's a series I didn't connect with. Will White, the name of his series. It escapes me right now. I saw mixed review for the last book, Cradle, those books. Yeah, those, you hate to see a long series that doesn't end right. But I mean, I won't read that series. I didn't like the first book. So I think the whole concept of progression fantasy just isn't kind of my thing, unfortunately. But yeah, it's always unfortunate when a series doesn't stick the landing. All right. Yeah, Cradle. It eventually came to me. Have I read Clive? It's hard to say. Clive Cussler. I've not read Clive Cussler. Um, yeah, that's. I know Durfee talks about him. I have a good friend in real life that loves his books, but I've never read any of his. Those are kind of crime adventure type of books, I believe. Yeah. Oh, that was probably Cradle. Yeah. Yeah, it just didn't work for me. I don't know. I have one of my issues with some modern fantasy writers is I think sometimes the focus isn't on kind of the basic tenets of storytelling, plot, character, setting, theme. I mean, that's kind of the four pillars of storytelling. I think sometimes like their magic system, they try to make that a pillar, and there's just not enough of the other basic founding blocks for it to make a great story, and it's unfortunate. I've seen so many authors that when someone asks them about their book and they say, "Well, let me tell you about the magic," I immediately say, "I don't want to read that book if that's all the book is about." And I think sometimes the progression fantasy is more about the progression rather than everything else. So, elves or dwarves? Coin flip. Um, Probably depends on the world, but let's go. Generally speaking, let's go with elves. Hard time getting Feast through Prose. Get picked up Summer Night, number 4. Yeah, Michael. What I've heard with these Dresden books is they continually get better, and they just kind of they hit a good peak at some point. I just haven't gotten there yet. I've only read 2, and I called the first book a good mystery for people who don't read mysteries, and I called the second book was just not a good book. And I think most Dresden fans even say the second book's not very good. But third one's been on the shelf for a year. I just haven't gotten there yet. So um, at some point I will. I know I will because I love crime fiction and I love fantasy. So the marriage of the two should work for me. Oh, thank you, Michael. Glad you like the content and the Murakami. Yeah, I have 6 to 8 left, and I've read everything. Although I'm not going to read. He did a book about his T-shirts. The guy's at the point now where he can just publish anything, and the publisher be like, okay. And he did a book about his T-shirts. I don't know if I want to read that one, but yeah, everything else by Murakami definitely will get there. I haven't read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but I will because I loved Piranesi. That book stuck with me and was one of those surprises. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, and I just found it very engrossing. And it's interesting because that's such a slim volume, and Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell looks like it's a big chunker. So, yeah, I've heard a lot about Brandon Sanderson. Not really interested in books. Spend too much time on in-depth magic system. Would you still recommend any of his books to me? Yes, absolutely. I would recommend the first Mistborn trilogy. To me, that is still to this day the best depiction of hard magic system because he makes it where it's part of the world building, but he also, for me, all it does is it raises the dramatic stakes the way he infuses it into the story. I felt that, and this is unpopular opinion, but I felt that sometimes in Stormlight Archive, the magic system seems cartoonish, or maybe not cartoonish, more like I was watching a video game play out where they'd run out of Stormlight and then he falls off the cliff or whatever. And I know Sanderson's influenced by video games, but I haven't played a video game seriously in like 25 years. So I don't have any interest in mixing that into my literature. But as far as Sanderson goes, I think that first Mistborn trilogy is fantastic. I think it's the best depiction of a hard magic system because it's clever, but it doesn't overwhelm the story. And as an example, in Mistborn Era 2, as they call it, it overwhelms the story. Like Sanderson gets so excited about the new ways he's using that magic system that he just kind of word vomits all over the page about it. And I'm not dissing Sanderson here. I'm a fan, but yeah, I think sometimes he goes overboard with his magic stuff. But yeah, I could definitely recommend the first Mistborn era, the first trilogy is very good. Yeah, it just wasn't for me. I think it was same thing with Mike. He was the same thing. I think he read 2 of them though. What do I think about the Tommy Knockers? I think we all, if you haven't seen it, got to see Kevin's review on on Goodreads. Or he just did one of the Talisman too. Tommy Knockers is another one that I've pretty much forgotten because I read it so long ago. This is one I know I read in the early 90s, and it's just one that didn't stick with me. So at some point I'll reread everything by King. So until then, I can't really say. Crime fantasy in a fantasy setting. Yeah, I've never heard of this series, but I'm writing it down. The Jerrig series. I know Stephen Brust. Why do I know that name? I know that author for some reason, but writing it down. Very cool. Wasn't sold in Dresden first two. Okay, well that's good to know. Yeah, I know Derry told me at some point you get into the Dresden books and it's just you can't put them down. So hopefully I'll get there at some point. I'm just not there yet. P.I. Garrett, Glenn Cook, Fantasy Noir. Yeah, I haven't read Black Company. I'm a little hesitant because I don't know. I've always been vocal about not liking military fantasy, but then I went and loved Dead House Gates. So I don't know what that means. But I liked, but didn't love The Heroes by Abercrombie. So I don't know if Black Company will be for me, but maybe the P.I. Garrett could be something good because I've heard such great things about Glenn Cook, how influential he is. So thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. DNF, the first Mistborn book. Yeah, well, no book is for everybody. Do you know they made a Doom shooter out of the Wheel of Time? Of course they did. Actually, I'm waiting to see some of the like there were all these rumors about like a Mistborn video game. That would be cool to look. I don't have a console. I wouldn't play it, but it would be cool to see what it looked like at least. Yeah, maybe Durfee, man, that guy reads so much. I mean, I read 100, 125 books a year and feel like a total amateur next to him. Reads so fast. It's amazing. Worst book I've ever read. Oh God. Wow. Silence. I think I tend to DNF if it's really, really that bad as far as getting to the end of a book. Wow. There was a book called The Flame Alphabet that I think back on and just think it was just one of the most hideous things I'd ever read. Yeah. I try not to dwell on the bad ones. So let's just call The Flame Alphabet. Let's call that one the worst one. First three Black companies like Lawson, if 95%. Okay, I might like it then. At least if it's written, there's some reason that I connected with Dead House Gates. I don't really know what it was, but I really enjoyed that book quite a bit. I've only read 2 of the books so far, but that was by far, my favorite of the 2. So I don't know. We'll see if I go into some Glenn Cook at some point. It's just one of those, my TBR is ridiculous. Like last year, I think I started the year with 400 books on the TBR. I read 125 books. And at the end of the year, I had 500 books on the TBR. It's never going to get down to 0, but we can get there. Oh yeah, absolutely, Michael. The Terror. I've read that. That's my favorite Dan Simmons. That was a top, a top 10 book of I think my historical fiction. It was in there, but yeah, that's a fantastic book. It's kind of a historical fantasy horror mixture. I mean, Simmons is one of those good people that can kind of balance things very, very well, mix all the genres so well together. Let's see, author I've not read yet and are most eager to read. Let's see. I have a few. Let me go by genre. Fantasy genre, I still haven't read Mark Lawrence, and I hope to get to him by the end of the year. Science fiction, Christopher Rocchio's top of the list. Let's see. That's probably the top 2. I prioritized some of my authors this year that I hadn't read before. David Gemmell was one. GGK was one. So those are two big ones I knocked out this year. So yeah, those are two I'm definitely looking forward to getting to. Worst book I ever read was Redemption of Time, fanfic sequel to Remembrance of Earth's Past. It got published. Interesting. Interesting that he let a fan fiction get published. Maybe he was just flattered. I don't know. That's interesting. So I like Oliver Twist. Yeah, I do. So I do enjoy Dickens. If you haven't seen my shelf over here in my videos, I'm collecting the Easton Press Dickens from the 70s, and I've read, I think, 8 of them so far. I'd put Oliver Twist in the middle. It's not the best or the worst, but I did enjoy the character. Did enjoy that one. And that one's kind of a shorter one, too. Sometimes Dickens, by the nature of the way his books were published, go on a little long. So, cool. Thank you, Logan Nine Fingers. Any German sci-fi or fantasy authors? I do not. Always interested to see different perspective. Yeah, I think a lot of the times we tend to read those authors that are more classic rather than modern, just because translations might not be as readily available for a lot of these. I mean, you think about at least Eastern Europe, we got the Witcher books, but there's really not that much that's been totally translated. So interesting. That might be a good question for Matt on books, since he lives in Berlin. He would probably know that one. So congratulations. Look for you to continued success. Got to go. Thank you, Francois. I appreciate you hanging out in the chat, throwing some good questions my way. So have a good rest of your weekend. So I'm caught up on the chat. Throw any questions you have left. I still have coffee left, so we'll go until I'm out of coffee. But it's appreciate all of you hanging out this morning. If you weren't here at the beginning, I hit 3K subs recently and just wanted to do one of these as a little thank you, just question and answer type format. Just really thankful for all of you. What kind of coffee? I actually don't remember. It was my new associate director gave me some packets of coffee. I think it was an Ethiopian blend of some sort. It's very good, but I don't remember the brand. Sugar, no sugar. A little bit of sugar, just a little bit to take the bitterness off. No cream, though. Never. Any chances of seeing you in the short section a bit more? Probably not. I haven't done many of those shorts. It's just, I don't have a whole lot of time for content. I generally put out a video a week, and that's about all I have time for. I try to do a community post or a Twitter post or something during the week, but as far as other video, it's pretty rare. I'll consider it. I know it helps engagement and it works for a lot of channels, but it hasn't been something that I have really done just because the time factor of it. But I know Mike does it a lot. Andrew does a bunch as well. It is nice to see the little blurbs, but doesn't quite make it. Favorite content to make. So I think for me, anytime I can rave about a book, anytime I can be really positive about a book or books, those are my favorites. I do love my monthly wrap-ups where I get to recap every book that I read in 2 to 3 minutes per book. I enjoy those quite a bit. But really anytime I can rave about a book. So I wouldn't say my top 10s are my favorite. They're my favorite to talk about, but those also, because I try to make them look nicer, I actually have to do more editing. So I don't necessarily like that side of it. But yeah, anytime I'm just being positive about a book is for me just my favorite kind of thing to do. Translations can be really confusing. German titles of book. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. And I know I kind of have like a lifelong project of one of my favorite books is Crime and Punishment. And I currently have I currently have three translations of it. And I want to just acquire a bunch of them. And every time I read it, reread a different one. Um, because it does make such a difference. I actually read a bad translation of Crime and Punishment until a friend told me about it and told me the one to get, and then I kind of reread part of it, and it kind of changed the world for me. So yeah, translated fiction's interesting, but I marvel at the really good translators like Murakami's books as an example. Murakami has such a unique voice, and it doesn't matter. It seems like he has two or three different translators. It doesn't matter which one's translating it, still feels like his voice, which gives me hope that when we do read good translations, that we're really getting a very accurate portrayal of the author. So yeah, but yeah, bad translation is brutal. So best book I found because of Booktube. Let me just say best authors I found because of Booktube. Robin Hobb, Joe Abercrombie. I mean, that's probably my top two right there that I probably wouldn't have known about them had I not started watching Booktube and seeing people talk about these. Because as I mentioned, I skipped like 15 years of reading fantasy. So they were big during that big gap, and I wouldn't have known who they were. I might have seen it on the shelf or whatever, but I'm rarely the type of book buyer that I see something on the shelf and buy it. I usually already have an idea of at least the books I want to buy, or like have my spreadsheet or whatever. It's rare that I go into a bookstore, see something brand new I've never heard of, read the flap and pick it up. So I don't know if I would have discovered those authors, which would have been a crime. So yay, Booktube for sure. Like any science books, like History of Time. I would like to read Neil deGrasse Tyson because I watched his show Cosmos, and I was so impressed with how he could take high concepts and explain them to the layman, because that's hard to do. It's really hard to do that. I know my experience as a teacher has helped me do that with musical terms, to be able to break down things to my younger students and explain them. And it's hard. It's not the easiest thing to do. I mean, I see that every time I bring like a several times I've brought like a college conductor to work with my orchestra, and they don't know how to talk to young people because they have all these high ideas and they can't translate them to their language. So deGrasse Tyson, I marveled at just the different ways he was able to take scientific concepts and just explain them in such a very clear way for a layman. I'm a layman. I mean, the last science class I took was acoustical physics in college in like 1995 or something. So I definitely want to read more of him. I haven't read a whole lot of science. I mean, I tend to read mostly fiction. When I read nonfiction, it generally tends to be more in the history side of things. Like I love Eric Larson. I love books about American Civil War. So those kinds of things. And of course, as a musician, I read music biographies. I read books about music. So I haven't, but I definitely, I mean, those are two authors I definitely want to read. Yeah, Crime and Punishment. What was interesting, Michael, is the first time I read it with, not the slammer, but it was the old Constance Garnett translation. And I liked it. The book was fine. And I told my friend this, and he gave me this look like, what do you mean? It's like one of the pinnacles of literature. And he said, what translation did you read? And I said, Constance Garnett. And then he said, well, maybe you should pick up the Pavir and Volohansky translation. And here's why. And he quoted, I don't know how he did it. He quoted two passages, and he said, here's how Constance Garnett translated it. And then he did the same passage with the Pavir and Volohansky, how they translated it. And then he talked about something about verb tense and something else that went way over my head. But bottom line was I didn't reread the whole thing, but I read passages of it, and it made such a difference, such an impact on me. So yeah, I'll continue to explore more translations with them, but yeah. Yeah, I think deGrasse Tyson is one of those typical big minds that has to get all the information out. I see that in faculty meetings a lot. um, Tends to do that. So, oh yeah, I don't know why Carl Sagan should still be big, you know, but yeah, I guess I read, what was the movie Contact. I read the book Contact before that movie came out way back when, and found it fantastic. Let's see. I've heard of the show Cosmos. Yeah, that's the one. And I loved on that Cosmos show. It was pretty cool. He told a story how young Neil deGrasse Tyson met Carl Sagan, which was really cool. And he still had like the letter Sagan wrote him. It was kind of special, but definitely enjoyed that. All right, a little more coffee left. If you got any more questions, throw them down there. If you weren't here early, one thing I talked about that I'm reading that I'm really excited is I started reading Hyperion last night. I read through The Priest's Tale, and I'm just absolutely riveted at this point. Very, very excited to read that. I'm going to read that and Fall of Hyperion this month. So excited for both of those. I just finished up the Soldier Son trilogy by Robin Hobb. Unfortunately, was a little disappointing, unfortunately, but the writing was still just incredible. But there were just aspects of the series that just didn't work for me, unfortunately. And I'm continuing to read the Empire trilogy by Raymond E. Feist and Jenny Wirtz. I've read the first 2 books, and I'll be starting September. My very first book will be the final book, Mistress of the Empire. So let's see. I love Stephen King. I've heard Neil Gaiman is as good as him. Which book should I read first? I read hold on, let me look. I sometimes forget book titles. I can tell you all about the book, but the exact title escapes me right now. Gaiman, where are you? Oh, it's hardcover. Oh, The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I read that one last year. Blew me away. Short read. You can probably read it in under 2 hours. And it was magical. It was well told. It was thought-provoking. So I would say that's where you start with Neil Gaiman. I've also read American Gods, which has more mixed reception. I liked it. I didn't say I loved it, but I liked it enough to want to read more by him. But Ocean at the End of the Lane, it was one of those, I was literally putting together my Red Fury Book Awards video that I do every year, and I got to started reading that book, and I said, I need to pause because this might make the finals. And it did. It was one of my best books of the year. So yeah, that's definitely the one I would start with, because it's short too, and you get an idea of his writing. I have not read any of the Gears of War books. Next fantasy series I plan to start. It depends. Probably, because I've several to finish. I have to finish the Empire trilogy. As soon as Philip's 3rd book comes out, I'm going to read the last 2 books of the Adan trilogy. And I'm currently reading, I'm in the middle of the Elric books as well. So start probably Prince of Thorns. That trilogy would probably be next. It's either going to be that, or if that doesn't happen by the end of the year, I'll be starting probably in January Brian Lee Durfee's trilogy. So it's going to be one of those 2. I hope to start Mark Lawrence by the end of the year. I had 12 reading goals this year, and I've since achieved 11 of them, and Mark Lawrence is number 12. So I hope I can fit him in, but it's kind of the books I want to read. It's kind of a clogged TBR at the moment. So Stephen King lied about the Dark Tower movie. Don't know the reference. The first movie or the new one? There's supposed to be a new one coming out that looks really good. Relays the comments. Have you thought of any of the Spiffbo novels to read? I'm doing the same thing as you. I'm kind of waiting to see who everybody's finalists are. But I know the one semifinalist that Philip Chase just revealed sounded pretty good to me. Gamble of the Gods. Mitchell Faywood, I think, is the author's name. That sounded really good, and his his review was very good, but I'm just kind of waiting to see what ends up on the finals because there are so many lists. So I'm kind of waiting for everybody's kind of, summation of their 9 books or 30 books, or I don't know what the number is. I think it's 9 finalists is what it'll get down to. Yeah, that's probably going to be my plan with that. Fallen for dystopia genre. Oh yeah, I just did a video on this. If you didn't see it, most of mine are pretty mainstream on that list, though. The thing with dystopian, there's so many different facets of it, and I've only just scratched the surface. And the reason that I did the video is I was making my top 10 sci-fi list, and I had so many dystopian books. I just said, oh, I'm just going to do a separate video so I can talk about more books, which is, my favorite thing, to just talk about a lot of different books. So, for me, The Road is the best one. Not everybody loves it, but I love The Road. I don't know. I would say check out that video, honestly, because I highlighted 10 of them on there, and I also had some that I want to read at the end. Yeah, there's so much out there. And then probably go through the comments section as well, because a lot of people gave me kind of deeper cuts in the genre and probably have more recommendations that you might know, be interested in reading. Read the intro to Gaiman, Elric. Yes, I did read that for the first Elric omnibus. Yeah, I haven't tried Stardust. I don't know if that one's a good one for me. He's very different. But Ocean at the End of the Lane was nice, magical little tale that I enjoyed. In fact, it was, just to contrast with my favorite author, it was everything that I wanted fairy tale to be by Stephen King, but wasn't. Felt that Gaiman kind of conceptually did what I thought King was trying to do, but honestly didn't pull off in that book. But let's see. Loves 5 Warrior. Oh yeah. Cool. Yeah. No, I'm definitely looking forward to reading those. There's John at Talking Story had mentioned that he was going to read it, and I said I need to read it. So he said, "Buddy, read," and he said there's like 4 or 5 of us that are going to do it. So I think we're doing that in January. So that'll be a good thing to start the year with some big epic fantasy. He said he liked the movie, the old one. Well, it's his story, so I think he has to sell it. Is the take. Although at his point, I mean, does he have to be honest about everything? I don't think so. A lot of the top 10 books. Durfee #1 slot. Yeah, a lot of people rave about that series. I know Patrick Leo just loves it. Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews loves the series as well. So, am I interested in the Metro series? I don't know. I haven't heard of that series, so I'm not sure of that one. You finished Ryan's book. I'm waiting for a top 10 moments. So many blow you away moments. Pure adventure ride. Very, very cool. Yeah, I've heard such good things there. Favorite thriller book of all time? Well, thriller, there's different kinds of thrillers. Crime thriller, I would say The Poet by Michael Connelly. Kind of mainstream thriller. I mean, you got to admit Gone Girl has the best plot twist in literature. Yeah, I mean, those two are probably up there. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that list. That might be a good one. It would be dominated by some Stephen King for sure. Yeah, it's funny. I don't think of thrillers as horror genre as much. Like when you said thriller, I first thought of crime thriller, which is interesting to me. Sci-fi thrillers. I love Dark Matter. I loved the Wayward Pines trilogy, both by Blake Crouch. Those were really good. I actually have not read Crichton, but I heard he's the kind of one of the masters of that genre. I think most of the thrillers I read have been kind of in the crime thriller realm. All right, I'm almost out of coffee. Any last questions here? And I'll let you all go on with your day. I will say, as I'm waiting for maybe a couple last questions, once again, I'm going to be on Anitha's channel this afternoon at 1 Eastern to talk about Fool's Assassin by Robin Hobb. I think I saw the thumbnail. I think Evie, Derry, and I'm forgetting somebody, are going to be on that. live stream as well. So that's going to be fun. And then next week, Monday or Tuesday evening, I'm going to be on Joanna's channel talking about the lines of Al Rasan. And I'm sure Jake Bishop will be joining us. And I think Laura from Fantasy Awash as well. So yeah, that's kind of what's coming up for me. And then my next video, I haven't done a book haul in like 6 months. So I have some books to show all of you. So I'll be doing that. That'll post a week from today, assuming I film it in time, which I usually do. So thank you, Mac. Next GGK book, A Song for Arbonne is probably going to be the next one for me. That's the one I originally intended to start with. But yeah, that one sounds fantastic, but I'll read them all for sure. Difficult one. How many plot twists make a good book? I think anything can work in any book if the author does it well. But I will say that if there are too many of them, you start to distrust the author. At least I do. So 0 to 3, I don't know. I don't know if I can concrete, answer that one. But I think just about anything done well can work. So Metro's Russian post-apocalyptic series, survivors of nuclear war living in Moscow, Metro tunnel, supernatural elements as well. I'm writing that down, Hans. That sounds right up my alley. Thank you. Can you do a Hyperion spoiler discussion with someone? I could certainly, yeah. If I love it, I probably will want to do that. It's taken me a while to get there, but I really love the book so far. I'm only like 20% in, but we'll get there. Thanks, Colin. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's been a long road, but happy to have gotten there. Yes. And of course, Hobb, anytime Derry is there, like I always want to see a Hobb discussion with the PhD of Robin Hobb. So yeah, definitely stop by there at 1 o'clock today. Hey, Kevin, I mentioned you earlier. Your Talisman review was awesome. Someone had asked about Tommy Knockers, but it's been so long since I've read it. So when I reread it, hopefully I don't hate it, but yeah. Okay, well, that's good to know, Mac. Yeah, I definitely want to read Song for Arbonne. I know Bridger had that as one of his entry points for GGK. So it'll be a good second book for me. And I know Jimmy read it this year and just loved it. So thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. Anytime. I just love, I got the coolest message on Goodreads just the other day from someone that had, just read a recommendation. And it was just nice when when people tell me they read something that I recommended and they love it. And it's just, it's so cool. It's one of my favorite things of having a channel. Derry, Maine would be my favorite fictional town, just because I've probably been there the most. I think there's more Derry stories than Castle Rock. So yeah, probably Derry. Yeah. Are you going to read, is it Bleak House? No, Black House. Guess that's the question. If you're going to read Black House. Okay, we have a dissenting of you for Tommy Knockers. Yeah, it's been so long. I just remember Tommy Knockers knocking at the door is all I remember from the book. Because again, it's been like 25 years, unfortunately, since I've read those. But yeah, I'll get back to it. I have plans on rereading everything by King at some point, starting with the short stories very soon. So be working through those. But I also want to do a Dark Tower reread. It's been a while since I've done that too. So all right. Well, I am out of coffee, so I think that's the perfect cue to go ahead and oh, that's good. I love how you put it many times. Actually, I will be rereading Memories. I will be trying Memories of Ice again next year. So yeah, I'll be trying again. It was a really bad month for me to read it. So I'm going to try it when I don't have so much work-life imbalances. So, yeah, 10 years. Yeah, you got to read it for sure. And it's a chunky one. The only thing I remember, because I read those so far apart from one another, I do remember they were very different. So maybe that's a good thing. Um, yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know from Colin. Um, didn't mind it. So, all right. Well, yeah, Matt Cawthon is amazing. I agree. May make my top 10 literary characters book when I get there. So, all right, folks. Well, I am going to call it a morning. Go do some things before I'm on Anita's channel talking about some Robin Hobb later. But I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you for being part of my 3,000 subs, even if you've only watched one video or commented once or even none of that. I appreciate all of you. It's so cool to just be able to talk to people about books that love it like I do. So have a great rest of your day. Again, thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.